Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here, to be able to share my experiences on the journey to the cloud with this August gathering. And before I start that, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share my experience with all of you. And what is cloud? What are the service models based on the organization that they belong to, the business case that they have, and how they want to proceed ahead. Digital transformation. First initiation into digital transformation way back when I joined the Indian Army in Corps of Signals. But the vision for digital transformation was propelled, as we all know, by the recent government's push for Digital India 2015. In my earlier avatar as in the Indian Army, we were the first ones to launch the Army Cloud after the announcement of our Digital India vision by the Prime Minister Modi. But that was different. That was different in the sense because in that environment you have resources. The factor of resource constraint is actually taken away. The mission that you are addressing, the problem statement that you are addressing cannot be bound by resource constraints. So when I migrated into my present avatar or moved into my present avatar, things changed and I began to analyze what is the world looking at when they mean digital transformation. And this is what, based on my interaction, this is not any statistical data, number of people that I interacted, some of my good friends. So it will be near and dear one personal interaction. So almost 91% of them, business leaders said, cloud is inevitable, I have to move. The surprising factor is 9% are still who think that I can still do without cloud, even today. 68% said that digital transformation is increasing my profits. Presence in the digital world everywhere is increasing my profits. 85% said that they must offer digital services, otherwise they'll become irrelevant. Because new kid on the block, startup, they are catching up and they're going to replace you very soon. And finally, they said in another 4 to 5 years' time, if we don't catch up, the irrelevance is inevitable. The context over here is reference to context is cloud is an enabler for this transformation. Cloud per se does not carry out the transformation, but cloud is an enabler for the transformation. So when I dive further, this is what the promise that I get from the public cloud providers in this country. Faster and flexible scalability, reduced IT cost, improved business interactions, enhanced business value, storage, easy data backup, competitive edge, business continuity. The top 9 factors is what I have captured. This is a CIO's dream. It ticks all the right boxes. So there is no way that one would not want to be on cloud. But this is the promise. When I begin the journey, So there are reasons, there are motivations for which you would want to begin your cloud journey. And the most compelling reasons that I could find was critical business needs. Data center exits, your data center is coming to an end of life. What do you do now? Mergers and acquisitions, 2 companies have merged, what do you do? How do you manage the new infrastructure? Planned capital reduction. So you don't want to infuse further capital, you do a planned capital reduction. End of support for mission critical technologies, you're forced to upgrade for technical upgrades. What do you do then? Do you go the traditional way that you were doing earlier, or look at the cloud native solutions that are available? Regulatory compliance, especially with respect to data sovereignty, etc., which have come in, and reduce disruption and improve IT stability. The critical business events, the migration motivations, cost savings. That is the first promise that any CIO gets. A CIO, at least in the Indian context, corporate, I would vouch for the public sector environment. I hope there are no foreign dignitaries over here and who are not comfortable with Hindi. Okay, so the first question is, फायदा क्या है? पैसा कितना बचेगा? That is the first question. You are a cost center. आप तो रोज नया डिमांड लेकर आ जाते हैं, इससे मुझे क्या फायदा है? So that is the first thing. Then high availability, this is the promise that you give. We will be available 24/7, services will be up and running. Optimization of operations, again indirectly saying that it would attribute towards cost saving. Increase business agility, prepare for new technical capabilities, you exploit cloud native solutions which are available to you. Market needs, geographical demands, and leverage cloud capabilities, which is again the PaaS and the SaaS part of it. Most of us, when we talk of cloud, we actually visualize in our minds actually the infrastructure as a service part of it. But if you look at it on your cloud spending patterns which emerge eventually after a few years of maturity in the cloud adoption model, your cost towards the PaaS and the SaaS is much higher than the cost that you incur towards your infrastructure as a service. My motivators, my data center was coming to an end of life. I wanted to reduce disruptions, cost saving, high availability in any case, increase business agility. We were a growing environment. Dedicated freight corridor is a 1 lakh crore company which runs freights, high-speed freights from Delhi to Mumbai and Delhi to Kolkata. So you had to have business agility, scale to meet geographical requirements, which was a slightly lesser priority for me. And maximum was, as far as I am concerned, my vision was leverage cloud native capabilities to bring again the overall cost of operations down. So I had the promise that was shown to me, my motivations, and as I commenced my journey, the first roadblock was the people who say, okay, go ahead. Where are the servers? I don't know where they are. Where is the data being stored? I don't know where they are. Earlier, I could see this rack, this server, this rack, this tray, and here is the storage. Here it is stored. Now, that ambiguity comes in. Fear of loss of controls. That ambiguity brings loss of controls, fear of loss of controls. And then the security paradox. A show of hands, how many CISOs or InfoSec people over here? So every time you go to the management, the same story, फायदा क्या है? Do I need to spend this much on security? That logic is spun on its head and it comes back to you say, is it secure? So what do? If this was not enough, you have something called the government procurement process. Where is the user requirement? Why do you need to store, you need servers, you have these dying down, please buy new servers, which addresses the management requirements of ownership also, of controls also, and security on-premise perceived security. Where is the user requirement? What is the scope of work? You have to have a fixed scope of work. Then and only then you can have fixed cost estimates. Government is used to functioning on fixed cost estimates. The procurement process, the business around which government procurement revolves, is fixed cost estimates, fixed services, and fixed deliverables. Now, if I have to leverage all that I envisaged in my CIO's dream, the previous two slides do not enable me. How do I scale if I have to give a cost estimate upfront that I am going to spend XYZ amount and I have to scale tomorrow morning, or I have to put auto scaling, that XYZ amount gets breached. If I am not auto scaling, or if I am auto scaling, storage gets affected, backup gets affected, mobility gets affected, business continuity gets affected, improvement in transactions get affected, and the cost goes up without approvals. Thank God for the biggest transformer. I personally can vouch for this gentleman. who came in at a time when for me it was a boon, for mankind it was a bane, for me it was a boon for operational, professional survival. It came in at a time when my data center had come to an end of life situation where the DC had got infested with rats, and I would spend first 4 hours of the day splicing the fibers in the data center. So that was the condition. So first 4 hours of the day were non-productive, and you could then start working for the next 4 hours of the day. So COVID came, all those hindrances that were there earlier of management buy-in and the procurement process to some extent got overruled, or I still had to give a fixed scope of work, and then there was a change in strategy. The change in strategy was to address the management and the procurement concerns. It was that, okay, from on-premise I moved to a trusted data center. What I call a trusted data center is a data center which is probably owned by a public sector undertaking, where I can still point to the rack. That this is the rack where your servers are. So the management can go and see. And you have number of public sector data center services providers over here, cloud service providers over here. And then in phase 2, move this from these trusted data centers to the public cloud. That was my strategy that I changed. And so first is the phase 1, second is the phase 2. Now I think everything was under control, and I could go ahead and implement my cloud vision that I wanted to. So phase 1 completed, and I'm going to move towards the phase 2 migration. As usual, procurement process requires tendering. What do I do now? I get into the nuances of the cloud services. A simple cloud service, or let me draw an analogy with a data center service, on my premise had a fixed cost towards a internet charge, fixed cost towards the inventory, fixed cost towards the applications, the platforms, and the hardware that was running. So all this was fixed cost. Come cloud, every bit that you use on the network size is chargeable. Come to a gentleman called WAF sits in between. Every rule that you make is chargeable. Every packet of data that passes through that rule is chargeable. It's chargeable on the ingress, it's chargeable on the egress. So let's say one rule, 2 times the cost. So that is for the firewall. Come to the load balancer, same story. VMs in any case were chargeable. Storage, backup, everything, every bit and byte that you're using over here becomes chargeable. What do I do? This was my CIO's dream. What happens to my reduced IT cost? I have a dilemma now. Do I go towards this model, promising panacea for all problems, or do I revert back to what my management was telling earlier and what my procurement process was saying? That you might as well stick to fixed scope so that you have fixed cost budgets. And trust me, number of my friends have suffered on this account. Because there are services that get enabled, which are requirement for that business process, without you probably coming to know. And that happens because, and before I touch upon that, so another thought process started that what do I do now to move ahead? And then there was this elimination that let me go towards the rate contract model. So all cloud services that are offered by a public cloud service provider, I would get into a rate contract with them and then do a tender. The person offering me maximum discount becomes my rate contract partner. Again, challenge. No single service of n cloud service providers are priced similarly. So service X, if it is priced at 100 rupees for one, and service Y, if it is priced for 110 rupees for other, both offer me a 10% discount, service Y becomes 89 and service X becomes 90. Initial cost was low, but after discount comes down to lower. How do I determine the L1 with whom I need to get into a rate contract? Multi-cloud is an option. You can have rate contract with everyone who gives whatever option. But in my case, I was looking at a single cloud service provider. So I devised another methodology, came up with an indicative bill of material which covered certain server stacks, certain storage stacks, certain DB as a services, certain security as a services, an indicative bill of services. Now the people were required to bid against the indicative bill of services, quote their price discount that they were offering. Based on the price discount, public listed price discount that they are quoted, I come to an indicative L1 cost and choose my cloud service provider. That is the way I went about handling my procurement process for the rate contract. Just when I thought I was done, the CSP introduced me to a new gentleman, the managed service provider. We don't interact directly with you. We are here to sell. We don't take liabilities. We have a hands-off approach. My managed service provider will do the handshaking. So all liability offloaded to the managed service provider and revenue sharing between them. What becomes important then is not the cloud service provider, because the capability exists, is the credentials and the experience of the managed service provider. And especially with respect to mission critical applications that government handles. And the biggest mission critical application, I must admit, is e-files today. My files have to move. Does the MSP have credential of handling e-office, NIC's e-office? Because you may, after all, from a technical perspective, it's only an application which has to be hosted on a server or an amount of combination of VMs. Unfortunately, that's not the reality. Is slightly different. Reality is that you have this gentleman MSP has to have a handshake with NIC for day-to-day application maintenance, patches, upgrades, problems, everything. So that is where this MSP's credentials become important. You navigated the maze, you somehow got into a rate contract with the MSP, finally things done. Really? Because then came up my next challenge, which many do not factor in. I personally have always been an advocate for it, was this: security. I have a cloud service provider, but then I need to budget for this now. Traditionally, people think cloud service provider, the CSP's security is good enough. But sorry, the CSP provides you bare bone security, which is security of its own data center, of its own cloud infrastructure, wherever they are, whether it's availability zone, data center, whichever way you want to call them. For the security, for the application, you need to build in through the cloud native applications or third-party solutions. So when you're making this journey towards the cloud, I thought of sharing my experience, especially with people who are looking to move public sector government, of one way how it can be done. Not necessarily that you go the same way, not necessarily that you go to the cloud, because 9% people still felt that there is no requirement of going to the cloud. You could take a multi-cloud approach, you could take a hybrid approach, you could take a co-location, depending on what kind of services that you want to use. And therefore, for me, the journey continues and the learnings continue. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts and my learnings in the cloud service journey.
Hello. Thank you so much for the energetic session early morning, sir. I would request you to please be on the stage for the felicitation. Thank you. And to felicitate, I would like to call upon stage Mr. Mohit Karla, Oryx India, to come on the stage.
Sorry, if I just about managed to save about a minute's time. If there are any questions, I'm happy to address.
Do we have any questions, ladies and gentlemen?
वेरी वेरी सिंपल, आई वांटेड टू बी ऑन वन बोट। पहले एक बोट चला लूं, फिर 2 बोट पे रख के उसका बैलेंस देखूंगा। वेरी सिंपल। थैंक यू।